an old video rental store, a former chat website, a fad of bracelets, and an old game that you would play long ago. Nostalgia is a topic that we are all deeply fascinated in, whether we know it or not. The longing for a world far away from the one that we live in right now is a concept that many people share. When humans are gripped with nostalgia, it will attach itself onto the mind and stay there, itching to be released by revisiting an aspect from your past that you look back on very fondly. Welcome back to Nostalgic Things from Your Childhood, your one stop for nostalgic things that you may remember from your past. This is Volume 6, and whether you are a longtime viewer or just tuning in for the first time, I appreciate you for watching. Tonight, we will look at 4 different aspects of nostalgia that you might connect to from your past. So as always, grab a snack, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's get an update. In episode 1 of the series, I talked about a straight-to-video special that Disney created in 1990 to coincide with the 35th anniversary of Disneyland, named Disneyland Fun. The 30-minute long special featured many different songs that were already a part of the Disney lineage, as well as original songs made for the special. The video was created as a part of the Disney Sing-Along Song series of videos, featuring sing-alongs of songs from other Disney films and characters. I mentioned that the special was a little more obscure, as I had not seen many mentioning it outside of a few underground circles. However, I have now been noticing that the special, as well as the Sing-Along Song series in general, gaining more traction online, with the When You Wish Upon a Star song from the ending of Disneyland Fun becoming a decently popular Disney-themed audio on TikTok, but that's not why I'm here. On March 4th and 6th of 2025, Disney hosted Disneyland After Dark 90s Night, an event that threw guests back to the 1990s with many different nostalgic meet and greets, food items, and photo ops, with one of the events being a sing-along karaoke attraction at the Golden Horseshoe, with the attraction sign being modeled after the title card of Disneyland Fun. This is, to my knowledge, the first time that Disney has officially mentioned Disneyland Fun since at least 2005, when the video was reissued on DVD. I just wanted to share that update before we started the episode, because I thought it was really cool that Disney did that. It's movie night.
Bring home the stars who grew up with you. Bring home a world where dreams come true. Bring home the best of old and new. Bring home the joy of Disney.
Bring home a Walt Disney video cassette like Pinocchio.
The 1980s were a big decade for home media. This was the decade that many big-name movie studios were beginning to open up to the concept of home media, allowing viewers to purchase the movie that they want and then owning it and being able to watch it whenever they would want, without having to watch it on television or wait for it to re-release in theaters. The previous decade had given rise to many different formats, including Betamax in 1975 and Laserdisc in 1978, but smack dab in the middle of these video formats was the most popular by far, VHS, introduced in 1976. Although being introduced in the mid-1970s, the format did not necessarily take off until the 1980s because of the need for a video cassette recorder, or a VCR, which ran you a pretty penny when they first came out. As VCRs became more accessible in the 1980s, VHS and home media as a whole became more prevalent. Along with the rise of VHS came the rise of video rental stores, which were an alternative for those who didn't want to pay the full price to own the film, but didn't want to go to theaters or, like I said, also watch it on television. One of these stores, perhaps the most popular of them, I already talked about with Blockbuster, but to start this episode, I wanted to focus on another one of the stores that I mentioned. This time, I want to mention Hollywood Video.
Hi, could you tell us a little bit about this movie?
Don, we need you up here. From flesh to steel, from blood to blade, from man to mutant, evil has a new enemy, justice has a new weapon, and the world has a new hero.
Sounds real nice, Don.
Income is exactly right. Very well done.
Hollywood Video was founded in 1988 by Mark Wattles. Wattles had dropped out of college and was struggling. As the story goes, his parents gifted him a VCR, and that, along with Mark's own struggles, motivated him to start Hollywood Video. The first location opened in 1985 in downtown Portland, and he would form the company in 1988. As of 1993, Hollywood Video was operating 16 different stores in Washington, California, Nevada, and Texas, and the company finally went public on the stock market. Blockbuster had actually filed a lawsuit against Hollywood Video in 1995, alleging that 5 former employees of Blockbuster were hired by the company with trade secrets. The lawsuit was eventually won by Hollywood Video after it was found that Blockbuster could not prove that the hiring was a detriment to them. Hollywood Video would continue business as normal, having opened 153 stores by 1995, including some operating under the Video Park or Video Central names. Hollywood Video would start to decline around the 2000s, leading to Blockbuster attempting to take the company over in 2005, but ultimately Hollywood Video would be brought out by a different competitor, Movie Gallery. The company would continue to go on a decline until the final US store would close on July 31st, 2010. The website would go down as well, but be brought back up in December of 2011 as a movie news blog, and is still up to this day, but the latest post was from 2014 and has since seemingly remained dormant. I've seen a lot of people mention Hollywood Video in a great light. Being the smaller competitor to Blockbuster, they were much more lenient when it came to late fees, whereas Blockbuster would send a mafia after you if you owed 26 cents in late fees. This led to Hollywood Video appealing to more lower income renters that didn't have the financial reliance to visit Blockbuster. Hollywood Video also had a wider selection, containing many foreign, classic, and obscure films that Blockbuster didn't have. There was always a sentiment that if Blockbuster didn't have it, then Hollywood Video would. Hollywood would also keep a wide stock of each film they had in their stores. In 1994, the average Hollywood Video was stocked with 16,000 videotapes. Each store would stock up to 70 copies of popular films, and some stores even had 200 copies of select films, whereas Blockbuster would only have a handful of some films, no matter the popularity. Hollywood Video's parent company, Hollywood Entertainment, would also attempt to launch a store-within-a-store video game rental concept named Game Crazy, similarly to Blockbuster's Game Rush, which wouldn't actually launch until 2004, 6 years after Game Crazy in 1998. The store would basically act the same as Game Rush would, allowing customers to rent video games, accessories, and consoles within Hollywood Video stores. However, the business would go down with Hollywood Video and Movie Gallery in 2010. The website was also launched back up in 2011, but this time becoming a video game news blog, but has not posted since October of 2014. The same month that Hollywood Video's last blog post went up. Hollywood Video was a staple for those who went to the stores, and especially for those who lived close to one. For many younger teen renters, Hollywood Video was the go-to, especially on the West Coast, as Blockbuster was seen as the place for more wealthier, older renters. Hollywood Video went down along with the ship that was video rentals, being now a byproduct of the video rental age, which had since all been killed by the streaming age. However, there is still a reason that the final Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon is still very popular, as many are still nostalgic to go back to those days that they could just rent a film, grab some snacks, and watch a movie from the comfort of their own home, a concept that now seems very distant but also very close to us. It's kind of weird. So, Hollywood Video, until next time.
He's really into special effects.
Only Hollywood Video has Star Wars The Phantom Menace for 5 days, so you can watch it again and again. Welcome to Hollywood, Hollywood Video.
Let's chat.
America Online. It's like one big family.
AOL's great. It's everything I want, all in one place.
I use my buddy list.
Incredibly easy.
In the early days of the internet, there existed a few different ways to chat with people from all around the world. Perhaps the most well-known was AOL's AIM instant messaging service. Most of you, even if you did not grow up in the 1990s, might have an idea what this was. This allowed you to chat with your friends that you would add online through your AOL account until the service was discontinued in 2017. However, AOL lacked a way to truly connect with anyone around the world randomly, needing to be added to your buddy list, which more than likely happened in person to be connected with them. The late 2010s would see a new platform take shape that would work to truly connect people from around the world. In March of 2009, 18-year-old Leif K. Brooks would start Omegle. The platform's concept was pretty simple. You would load onto the site, type in some tags, and you would be matched with an anonymous user with the same tags as you. The platform would explode in popularity, seeing more than 150,000 page views a day only less than a month after it launched. Naturally, some competitors would pop up and try to replicate this model, most notably Chat Roulette in November of 2009, which was essentially the same as Omegle. The next year, in March of 2010, Omegle would launch its infamous video telephony feature, meaning that people could now connect and see each other via webcam. Unfortunately, this would lead to some less savory things happening on the site almost instantly after this feature was launched. This led to a massive influx of sexual content to the platform, which Kate Brooks expressed disappointment for. Despite the fact that Omegle did IP log the users that would display sexual content on their site for Bandz, this did not stop the massive influx of sexual content, especially because there would be millions on the platform at any given time. There was also not a profanity filter on the website, which made it difficult to shield users from obscene content. This all wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that the website was open to all ages, including many minors. Originally, users 13 years old and above were allowed to use the website with their parents' permission, which honestly worked about as well as Asbestos did. But that didn't stop the surge of teenagers onto the platform, especially during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. The rules of the website weren't updated until 2022, 13 years after the website launched, when it was changed so only users 18 years or older could use the platform. Towards the end of the website's life, the platform had faced many challenges, including the ethical ones that I previously mentioned, as well as the financial challenges. In 2019, a user from Oregon filed a $22 million lawsuit against the site, claiming that she was blackmailed into what she described as, quote, digital sex slavery by a Canadian pedophile named Ryan Scott Fordyce. Omegle even acknowledged the threat of pedophiles on the website, as she mentioned that Omegle had a message on their splash screen reading, "Predators have been known to use Omegle, so be careful," which was removed later on after this lawsuit came out. On November 8, 2023, Kay Brooks posted a message on the website, noting that the financial troubles as well as the problems with child exploitation on the website has ultimately led to its closure. Now when you type in omegle.com, this message is all that is seen. Shut up! Now when you type in omegle.com, this message is all that is seen, with a drawing of Omegle's gravestone. Although Omegle has gone down, many of its contemporaries still remain, such as Chat Roulette, which is still going strong to this day, and although they have battled their own controversies, they have been mostly able to dodge getting shut down. Now, not all of Omegle was bad. There were definitely some good sides to it as well. The website was very influential and was important in connecting people from around the world. People met those with similar interests, eventual close friends, and in the case of this Reddit user from 13 years ago, their significant other. So while Omegle will most likely go down in infamy as one of the worst things that the internet has ever hosted, at least it will be remembered by some as a more positive place, even if now it can be described more as childhood trauma. So, Omegle, until next time. Colorful shaped figures.
Now, I know how much you like Pokemon, so I've made you a special breakfast. Look! It's Pikachu!
Throughout the last few decades, several different fads have come and gone. There were the pet rocks of the 1970s, the Pog fad of the 1990s, and Pokemon in the late 1990s to early 2000s. One fad that rose to immense prominence in the early 2010s but died out years later was silly bands.
These colorful bracelets are the latest craze, and there's nothing silly about it.
They're fun to wear, and there's all different kinds of shapes, and you could trade with your friends.
Robert Croak got the idea for silly bands while visiting a trade show in China.
Silly bands were a collection of colored, shaped rubber bands that you could collect and wear as a bracelet on your wrist. The bands originated in Japan around 2002 by Japanese design company Passkey Design in order to promote sustainability. Although they never really caught on in the United States, they were popular in Guilford, Connecticut, and at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. It wasn't until Robert Croak, the owner of Toledo, Ohio-based BCP Imports, encountered the bands while on a business trip in Japan and decided to repurpose them for his own business, making them thicker and larger, marketing them to kids. The bands would start being sold in the southern United States around 2008, becoming a popular seller and moving up the East Coast towards New York. By 2010, many retail stores in the United States were selling silly bands in their stores, including Quiznos Subs, who had put silly bands in their kids' meals. Cincinnati, Ohio-based video game developer Zoo Games would release a silly bands video game for the DS and iOS in 2011, and even a silly bands movie would be released in 2011 named Bandz on the Run, directed by Charlie Mason.
Students at several Kansas schools will have to find a new accessory, as silly bands are now off limits. Schools across the state and here in Kansas City now prohibit students from wearing small plastic bracelets like these.
The bands were not without controversy, however, as it was found out that several children were getting injured from wearing silly bands, as well as many knockoff products that had sprouted up. Such is the case of a 4-year-old boy in Seneca Falls, New York, who found that the bands had dug into his skin. Other injuries were reported as well, with the most prevalent one being circulation cutoff, as children would sometimes wrap dozens upon dozens of bands on their arm, cutting the blood circulation in their arm off. Many schools began banning the silly bands for them being too distracting to children, similarly to how slap bracelets were banned in many schools in the 1990s, although slap bracelets were a detriment to children's health as well. The popularity of silly bands started to die down in the mid-2010s, with many stores ceasing the sale of them, although the Silly Bands website is still active to this day, and you can still buy silly bands. Robert doesn't really talk about the business as much, and mostly talks about business advice and crypto on his social media, most notably his TikTok account. The Silly Bands Instagram account has not been active since June of 2024, and has actually pivoted into NFTs, with them announcing Silly Bands NFTs in January of 2022. Silly bands were a pretty integral part of many people's childhoods who grew up in the 2000s and 2010s, myself included. The bands became so ubiquitous in elementary school life that it almost became a sense of pride on how many silly bands you had on your wrist. If you had more silly bands, you were more popular in school. I remember I hopped on the trend later on. I remember seeing them for the first time when I was in 2nd grade. I asked my parents to buy a pack of them, and thankfully they did. The packs at the time were only around $5 and would get you a good amount of bands. Silly bands experienced a brief revival in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, a time where many people were embracing the nostalgia for a time that was much better than the one they were currently living in. And although it was refreshing, I did mention that it was brief, as the popularity of them seemingly dwindled as the year went by, and now has been relegated to a small relic that people mention in passing, but at least it could be something that people look back on fondly. So, silly bands, until next time.
So come see us at Wits End and get silly for Silly Bands.
Let's go on a hike. In January of 1848, gold was discovered in California. Practically overnight, the American West was the place to be as thousands of settlers hiked out westward in pursuit of wealth and success. Because of the massive influx of settlers traveling, many different routes were laid to give settlers an easier time while traveling. The California, Mormon, and Bozeman trails became the traveling hub for thousands of migrants that wanted to strike it rich. But perhaps the most well-known trail out of all of these was the Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail ran for nearly 2,200 miles from Independence, Missouri to Oregon City, Oregon. The trail was first laid in the 1830s by fur traders as a means of, you guessed it, trading fur, until the first wagon trains were organized by 1836, and the trail would become widely publicized by 1843. 128 years later, John Blankenbaker would create the first ever personal computer, the Kenback 1. Since the creation and introduction of these home computers, people have been looking for ways to create entertainment for others to engage in on their own personal computers. One of these games, one of the earliest examples of computer games, is the subject of the last part of this episode, named the Oregon Trail, named after the aforementioned Oregon Trail. The game was first developed in 1971 for the HP 2100, a series of microcomputers that were developed in the 1960s. The game was created by Don Reich, a senior at Carleton College, and his two friends, Paul Dillenberger and Bill Heinemann. Other versions of the game would be ported to other computers, such as the Atari 8-bit and Commodore 64, but the game wouldn't become widely popular until 1985, when developer Minnesota Educational Computing Consortium, or MECC, would port the game to the Apple II, the third version of the game made for the Apple II. The game would incorporate the text-based strategy that was prevalent in the previous versions, as well as video graphics. The game would become widespread, being ported to the MS-DOS in 1990, Mac in 1991, and Windows in 1993. The game had you play as a wagon train, a group of wagons and settlers traveling on the Oregon Trail over several days. The player first picks the occupation of the main character, either a banker, carpenter, or farmer, which determines how much money the player starts with at the beginning. They then name their character and the 4 party members and purchase supplies from the general store, which include oxen for pulling the wagon, spare parts for the wagon, food, clothing, and ammunition. The group then sets out on a trail that is split up by 16 segments, with the ending of each segment either being the group crossing a river or a fort. By crossing the fort, you get to purchase more supplies for your party. Throughout the game, certain random events could happen that could affect your party, such as a storm slowing you down, or members getting injured or sick. If not treated, that member would then die. These range from injuries such as broken arms or legs, to illnesses such as typhoid, or perhaps the part that the game is most known for, dying of dysentery, which despite its meme value, is not a very fun way to die. Once you get to the end of the game, you get the option to either cross a toll road cutoff if you have enough money, or cross the Columbia River, which starts a minigame where you dodge rocks. Then you get a score for how many people you have left, wagons, oxen, spare wagon parts, clothing, ammunition, food, and cash left, and that's the end of the game. Of course, the game was meant to be educational, teaching children about the Oregon Trail and what it took to be able to cross the trail. Despite the game originally being made for a home setting to be entertaining, many schools found it beneficial to have the game on their old computers. If you grew up in the 1990s and perhaps the early 2010s, you might remember playing this game, specifically the 1985 version, on a computer at school. The game was rather easy to understand, but still kinda difficult. Even for me as a grown man, I still cannot complete this game for the life of me. But despite that, it's still a fun time to revisit every so often. It's one of the earliest PC strategy games made, and it's still available to this day on many consoles from iOS to Android, Switch, PS5, Xbox, and even on your calculator. So, Oregon Trail, until next time. Nostalgia is defined as a sentimentality for the past. We as people experience nostalgia all the time, whether we know it or not. When you remember something or recollect a funny story to your friends, you're engaging in nostalgia. a sentimentality for the past, and while it's fun to remember the things from your past and remember when you believed times were better, you shouldn't use that as an excuse to dwell on the times now. Sure, the world may look worse now, but that's because you were younger and you viewed the world through the eyes of a child. But of course, it's not always bad to go back on something and put those rose-tinted glasses back on. This has been Nostalgic Things from Your Childhood Volume 6. My name is DJR, and as always, thank you for watching, and take care.